Hi again, it's Ryan Miller with Etna Interactive. I'm going to be talking today about email handling and the use of email in the medical practice. Before we begin though, I want to take a second to talk a little bit about what's happening up here. It's for the first time I think in a really long time that I've had any facial hair. My office is participating in the month of November in a event called Movember. It's an event that is focused on raising both money and awareness for men's health issues. Specifically, there's a focus on prostate cancer and testicular cancer. So not just me, a lot of my colleagues are walking around the office today with a whole lot of facial hair on. So I guess I probably just need to ask you to excuse it and apologize in advance in case I start doing this. This is a three-part series that we're going to be talking about. We're going to first take a look specifically at the etiquette that applies for email in the medical practice. Now, there was a study that I found very interesting. It's back in 2011. It looked at 114 aesthetic clinics, and the findings were pretty startling. What they found is that 36% of those clinics didn't even bother to respond to the emails coming from potential patients. Now, I realize the graphic there may be just a little bit startling, but it's true. This is what it feels like to a patient when you or your office fail to respond. And it basically feels like you're telling them that you just don't want their business. In addition, it's not just the absence of communication, but sometimes the quality of communication that sends really negative signals about how much you value that patient in the practice. This is a real example here. Because of our work with the practices that we serve, we see all kinds of email communications going out to patients. And interestingly, in this particular example, we had a patient who you may not know, but Kathy was the name of the receptionist that had spoke to this woman on the phone. Kathy had offered several consultation times and this particular patient was writing back to the practice to try and confirm. Right? It's a very functional email, and yet the message that the doctor sent back over the weekend from his iPhone was this: "Thank you for your inquiry. Please call our office at this number to arrange a consultation." Now, interestingly enough, that patient called back and complained to the office about the email because it completely ignored the context and the history of the communication, and it really caused this patient to second guess whether they should be going to this doctor, going to this practice at all, because it looked like the doctor didn't care and it looked like the office didn't pay attention. All of those are problematic and they're the wrong signals to send. So let's talk a little bit about email etiquette, and it's really very simple. You want to respond promptly, you want to take the time to respond professionally, and you need to protect patient privacy in your emails, especially for those of you in the United States that are dealing with HIPAA these days. So this is a very hard statistic for many practices to deal with. I apologize, I'm just the messenger here, but if you want that consult, you need to respond to email inquiries within 5 minutes. Now, there's two things we hear all the time when we talk about this statistic. First and foremost, that this is completely impractical. We hear that a lot. I think unreasonable is a word that's often used. And secondarily, that it makes the practice potentially look like they are desperate. And there's a really interesting statistic, a study that came out a number of years back, done by an MIT graduate that looked at the relationship between service inquiries and response time. And basically what he found is that if you wait 30 minutes or more, the likelihood that you are ever going to connect with that prospective client drops 100-fold. Not 100%. You are 100 times less likely to ever connect with that person if you wait 30 minutes past their email. We can understand, I think, fairly simply why that is. Oftentimes when someone takes a moment to email your practice, that's the moment they're free. And 30 minutes later, they've moved on to a different part of their life, they're back at work in a meeting, and they simply aren't available to you anymore. And those practices that got back to them fast, well, they solved the needs of that patient. They booked that consultation, and the patient doesn't really need you anymore a half hour later. So response time is important. As we look ahead and we talk a little bit more about the quality and the nature of the content that you would be considering for email, it's important to first understand the context of the messages that are coming in. Now, recognize that for most of you, you're going to have a bunch of different sources where email will originate. For some, it will be on your website. But there are different kinds and quality of forms. There are contact forms, there are consultation request forms, there's event registrations, and also you'll receive email from third-party websites as well. So when you think about that, you have to understand that each message will have something inherently different based on the kind of form and where that form was placed. In addition to that, patients may or may not have seen your website, and often the body of their message will tell you how much they already know about you and your procedures. And of course, different types of communications need to be treated differently in terms of their ultimate urgency. If you're having a busy day and you have to make hard choices about what email message to prioritize, I'd suggest prioritizing responding to consultation requests over general inquiries for things like directions. So crafting a professional message, we're going to talk about this in detail in the next part of the series, in part 2. But for those who don't want to watch any further, it's fairly straightforward. Greet patients and prospects personally with a custom greeting line. Take the time to answer their question as best that you can in the body of an email. Be sure to talk a little bit about the quality, the merits of your practice so that you can keep the dialogue going, and include some kind of call to action. Do you want them to reach out and call the practice? Should they expect a follow-up message for you? What do you want them to do and expect? It's okay to include some soft promotion in your message, but be sure that at the end of your message you have a full signature line that identifies who is responding personally, what is their role or title, and include all of the contact information from the practice. Remember that patients are usually requesting consults from 2 to 5 different practices, and they may not remember who you are from the other signals in your mail. So let them know. Now, at the same time, we really do need to think about patient privacy. In the United States, we're concerned with HIPAA. In Canada, it's PIPEDA. We want to include language in the body of the message that is a standard reminder of your privacy policy, as well as those disclosures and consents that are required. In many areas, it's advisable to remind patients that responding to email does not establish a doctor-patient relationship, and that you encourage them to get off email and on the phone or into the practice as soon as possible. Now, for those of you that are taking this seriously, it's something you might consider as setting an email policy for the practice. Now, at the very least, when we talk about email policies, just to ensure that your staff understands how important email is to the practice, how much you're investing to get potential patients to inquire with your office by way of email, and what your expectations are of the staff in terms of the timing and the quality of those email replies. I like to, for staff that we're working with directly, remind them that the possibility that anything that is said or written in an email may very well ultimately be read in a court of law. It's an important thing to understand that these communications can and will become a part of the patient record. And for those of you that are thinking more seriously about a written, formal email policy for the office, I've included a link in the slide. And in fact, you can click this video playback to open a sample policy language in a new window. Now let's sum up really quickly, kind of bring all those things together. It's about prompt replies, a professional quality to your message, and an effort to respect and protect patient privacy. If you do want to learn more and you're not already a subscriber to our newsletter, visit etnainteractive.com/newsletter to join today, or find us on Facebook. That said, we'll thank you for your attention.